Hey guys, it's Dan with Flawed Offroad. Today I'm going to show you a beginner's take on frame rust repair, whether you've just got a bad spot, a rust hole, whatever it may be. There's many ways to skin this cat. I'm going to talk about a few different ways you can do it. I'm going to show you a couple wrong ways to do it, and then I'm going to show you how I corrected those. Stick around.
You can repair your frame pretty cheaply, and doing it as a beginner. I'll let you know a little secret. I'm kind of a newbie at this stuff. So in my case, I didn't need these old shock mounts that mounted on the inside of the frame back here. I don't know if you can see it, but these things, they collected a lot of water and crap behind it, and so when I cut this off of there, it exposed a couple of rust holes, which I'll show you in a minute. I just can't deal with it. I gotta get rid of it. I gotta cover it up. So as you can see, when I removed the shock mount, we exposed a couple of holes here, and there's actually one on the back side right here. I can stick my whole finger through it. It's about that big around. And the reason that is these YJ shock mounts, they sit on here like this, roughly. I had another piece that came out here, and it just creates like a cup and mud and dirt and everything. It just sits in there, stays wet, and over time it just rots out the frame, as you can see. So the plan is to take my piece of angle, get it the length that I want, and I'm gonna trace out exactly where it goes. I'm gonna take my grinder, I'm gonna cut it out, then I'm gonna take a flap disc, clean away all the excess paint and rust and stuff, hold it on there with magnets, and burn it in. I wanna show you that anybody can do it. My skills are what they are. I've taught myself, but so you're probably wondering why there's no rear axle in this Jeep. And if you want to find out more about that, I'm going to be posting another video soon. I'm swapping in Dana 60 from a 78 Ford in here. So that's why nothing's in here right now. That's why I cut the shock mount off in the first place and exposed this little fun project. So my first step here is just figuring out how big of a piece I want on here. So I'm actually going to go probably just outside of these weld seams from the previous shock mount. So I'm going to take a measurement here. Looks like about 5.5. We're just going to call it 6 inches, and that'll bring us a good bit past out into where there's some clean metal. And hopefully this will keep anything from continuing to spread. Alright, so some of the tools that you're going to want for a project like this, obviously the piece of metal that you need. I highly recommend getting a speed square. They're cheap as dirt. We're going to be using some welding magnets to hold this into place. Obviously the welder, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then I've just got out a few other tools: safety glasses, sawzall, a grinder, cut-off wheel. I've got a third grinder with a flap disc on it. And by the way, I know that that'll work on the inside of the frame. I haven't showed you that part yet, but if you're doing this, make sure that whatever you measure on the top also works on the side. Some of these repairs will only be on one side, some will be 2, 3 sides of your frame. So we're gonna mark 6 inches on this side and on the back side. We're gonna see how well the sawzall will do on this. If it doesn't do well, we'll throw some sparks with the grinder. You can see this piece I cut with the sawzall. Went through it like a really cold, dull knife through butter, but it went through. So when you're doing welding projects, there's all this like discoloration and stuff on here. You really don't want to weld through that. So prep work is pretty key. You want to take, a wire wheel, or even better, a flap disc, and just grind away. this mill scale is what it is, around all the edges that you're going to weld, which in this case is going to be all the way around. So we'll get that cleaned up, and then we'll mark this on Jeep. We're going to take the old porcupine maker here and see how it does cleaning this It's nice you have a fairly cleaned up piece. I could take the flap disc around the edges and get it a little cleaner, but at least the scale's off of it. Now we're gonna lay this out and trace it. So I had talked about a couple different ways that we can do this. So I made a crude little drawing here. One way is just to lay it over the holes, which that's about what the orientation of my holes look like if you're looking from the inside of the frame. Lay it on there, grind off the mold welds, weld it on there, and be done. And then you know it's gonna end up looking like that, which for all intents and purposes it would probably work all right. But what I'm gonna do is actually cut out around this and try to sink this down into the frame so that it sits more flush. So that's kind of this drawing here, and you can see my crappy little magnets holding it on there. So that's what I'm gonna attempt today. If I just lay this on there and trace it to make my cut, it's actually going to end up in the wrong space because I'm going off the inside edge. So I actually need to flip it out like this, get the backside flush, and make my trace there. I'm actually going to hold this on there with a magnet. Maybe. My magnets aren't cooperating through the rust, apparently. Now I need to do the same thing on the back side. Having these old weld goobers here I don't recommend because it's making this not want to sit very flush. I believe it's going to be close enough. There we go. Now I'm going to mark the back side. I actually completely screwed up the first mark and I was up this way too far, so I'm just redoing it real quick. So you can see here on the inside of the frame, there's my big beauty hole, and this is the old weld where that bracket was on there for the shock mount. So what I'm gonna do is just clean up this bottom part here, anything close to where my weld's gonna be. I gotta get this, there's still a big ridge there, and I just wanna get that smoothed out, and then we'll work on cutting this piece out, which I'm gonna use this farther down line. I'm a little bit concerned about this rust right here. But once we take the grinder to it, we'll find out how bad it is. It kind of feels just like surface rust. Same right here. Worst case scenario is I'll have to cut a longer piece if this isn't a good material to weld to, but I think it's gonna clean up fine. I think it's just a little bit of surface rust. You also gotta consider the fuel tanks right here, so, you know, throw sparks at your own risk. As you can see here, I started to make my cut. For some reason, the camera didn't record, and I got way the fuck off course because it's kind of a bad angle to be in down here. This one ended up so crooked. I don't know, I may end up having to just go to this second line and just go cut a second piece. And there you have it. Clearly rotted from the outside. That's the outside. It's the inside. It's a lot better shape than I thought, actually. That's good. So obviously I fucked up on this cut a little bit. I was having a hard time seeing with all the sparks. I came out too far here. I fucked up on the bottom a little bit. We're gonna see if we can make it work. I've got some tricks to fill gaps, like if I ended up a little wide. I actually have some welding rod for a TIG, and if you end up with too wide of a gap, you can kind of like cut a piece of it and tack it in there, and it kind of gives you a place for your bead to roll along, kind of like acts like a filler. So this is kind of just the first little test fit holding it up there. It actually sits in there really nice. This corner sticks out farther than the frame because the frame's rounded. So I'm actually gonna take this over to the grinder and round this off a little bit. Other than that, I mean, oh, good one, Dan. It's sitting in there pretty flush. I'm gonna check the inside real quick. Yeah, there's definitely a gap at the bottom where I overcut. As you can see, I've got it setting in place with the magnets. Everything feels fairly flush. It actually looks pretty good to me. Now on the back side, I went a little wide with the grinder in a couple places. So after I get this tacked in, but I'm gonna have to come back here and either cut a little triangle piece, or I'm just gonna take two pieces of welding rod, tack them in there to kind of fill the gap.
and then I'll probably have to do a double pass, and that's on this side. On the inside, there's a big triangle missing. There's a little gap at the bottom. I think I'll just be able to fill that one with weld. All right, so let's get started. Trim this little booger off of there. And now for the fun part, doing it from the back side. Okay, so everything is tacked into place now. Still got to get this machined out on a little bit. That thing ended up being a huge fucking goober, but whatever. That's what grinders are for, right? Now I got to get a piece of welding rod and do some little repairs on the backside. Stay tuned. Okay, so as you can see on the backside, I really fucked with the grinder here. I was way off. I don't know how I got so far off the mark, but you know what? It happens, and at least it's on the inside where nobody's gonna see it. But we can overcome that, and I'm going to show you how. So I've got some welding rod here. Basically what I'm going to do is cut a little piece. I'm going to tack weld it in right there to kind of fill that gap, and that way when I weld over it, it's not going to blow through. I'm going to do the same right here. I'm going to need 2 pieces. I'll put one on first right there, then I'll stick a second one in there. I'll run my main weld down this seam first, clean it up. There'll probably be like a gap here, and then I'll come do a second pass. I just want it to be strong, and I wanted to try to show you guys that it's possible, even if you don't feel comfortable doing this, or if you don't think you have the skills. You don't always have to have like perfect skills, especially if you can overcome little fuck ups like this and stuff just fine. So you can see there, I got my first one laying in there. I'm gonna see if I can tack it in there without knocking it off. So I gotta trim this down a little bit. So there you go. It's not a thing of beauty. It fills the hole in. It's gonna allow me to run a bead. I do the same thing right here with this piece. Pushed out a little bit. And there you go. We should be able to get that sucker welded. Okay, so what ended up happening is my camera didn't record, but I got this top side welded. I blew through really bad right there, so I had to go back and fill it a little bit. I'm gonna probably smooth this shit out. I'm having a hard time getting it dialed how I want on this stuff. It seemed like it was too cold. Turn it up a little bit, blew right through. Same thing happened over here, so I had to come back with what these extra little gobs are right here. So I'm gonna smooth those down a little bit and maybe just try to run like another pass right down it. This front one, I ended up moving kind of fast on it because I just thought I was gonna blow through again. This isn't turning out like I wanted it to, but this is a beginner video and I'm a beginner, so it is what it is. You can see I've done one round of smoothing with the flab disc. Alright, I've been having some recording issues here, but I don't know how well you can see that. I'm gonna run another pass on this side. Ooh, that was starting to get hot there at the end, I think. So I did make it clear that this is a beginner's video for people that are like super beginner like me. I wanted you to see the mistakes that get made along the way. This is basically what we end up with. I'm gonna smooth this out a little bit more. It's on there solid as fuck. It just doesn't look that good. Honestly,
I should have just did this the easier way that I outlined earlier in the video, but I wanted to give my shot of actually like Frenching it in how it's supposed to be. So this is what I've come up with. You know, I don't know. I'm gonna go eat dinner and I'm gonna let this stew for a little bit. The goal was like I just wanted to try and test myself. Clearly, I got a long ways to go. Like I can do a whole lot better when it's like right out in front of me and I've got like good movement, and I'm sure everybody's that way, and the only way to get better at that is with practice, and that's completely why I did it this way. Okay, so here's what we ended up with down here, and after some head scratching last night and everything, I realize now that I probably was just trying to make too long of welds, and that's why these little, like, I guess they're undercuts or whatever, I don't know. Being on the inside of the frame, I really don't care. I mean, I know it's strong enough. It's just a little bit ugly. So now I just have to decide whether I want to weld in some of these lower spots, smooth it back out again. So I came back along and I did a little bit of tack weld stacking, and it occurs to me this is what I should have been doing the whole fucking time. Not only does it look better, but it keeps the shit from blowing through. So I went through, I did some of the kind of low spots where I had little holes and whatnot. Partially blind here because my exhaust pipe seems to be blocking the sensor on my helmet, so like only every other time was it actually auto darkening. So that's pretty much all there is to it. I'm actually not gonna fully paint this right now because I've got some outboarding of new shock towers to put on here, so I'm not gonna worry about it that much. Basically, I just coated it in some rust coat primer. You can see, you can kind of tell where it was at, but I really don't give a shit about that. The point is, it's strong, it's on there, there's no more rust hole. That's what we set out to do. I'll try to show the inside, but it might be a bit too dark right now. I just left those welds on there. I just knocked off a couple of the worst little sharp spots to seal it off for now to keep rust from forming on it. So that's basically it. Hopefully you learned something. Obviously I learned something along the way here. I was trying to weld way too long, and I should have just tack stacking basically the whole time. That would have worked out a whole lot better. But hey, that's what we're here for. I learn, you learn. If you liked what you saw today, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. We're going to be doing all kinds of stuff, including axle swaps on this Jeep. I'm building an M101 Army trailer into an overlanding trailer. We're doing all kinds of repairs. Anyway, thanks for watching Flawed Offroad. We'll see you next time. Okay, so I lied, I painted it anyway. I couldn't stand looking at the brown.